Hello. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about I. So, like, who am I and that sort of topic. Um, it came from this very interesting thing that Adyashanti said. Um, it was in a context of having lots of fear, particularly the fear of the void, that you just get swallowed up by it. Um, and he was saying that the fear comes about by uh, the mind making some image of the void and it being in relationship with the void. Now, it's this external thing that's swallowing you up that's very scary. The reason why it's actually okay and where you don't need to be scared is because that void is actually you. And so the reason that you're scared is because you're in relationship to it or sort of separated from it. And is particularly you're in relationship with something that actually is yourself, apparently. And I think actually in general, the way that um, I've approached the word I is very much in relationship to something. It's quite natural because the spiritual teachers are talking about something, and it's somewhat in your experience, but not quite. And so you're looking for whatever it is that they found. So you're looking for something new. They say to look at I, and so you're looking for something new around that area. And you have questions like, who am I? And I think maybe the first time you ask that question, it makes sense, but I think you very quickly become something different. So I think actually inquiry is subtle. I think is actually very difficult to make it good. Maybe it is better than other things you can do. Um, but I think one does have to be very um, sort of careful on how to ask a question, because a question may easily set you up to be in relationship with whatever the answer is, which usually is completely fine, but for spiritual purposes is at the detriment, because somehow you don't really just immediately go to your immediate experience. It's always for something else, for something new, for something in the future, for something else. And it's so natural. So being an immediate experience, it feels completely. It doesn't feel worthwhile. Um, it's not. I can talk a little bit about a certain question I've had and my experience with it, and maybe that can be um, helpful as to how to actually ask these questions. Now, a lot of it, I think, is going to be very vague and like very intuitive. So I don't think very helpful, but maybe a little bit. Um, my question was actually they talk about I a bunch, and there's this mysterious thing, and don't think about it too much, or like everyone knows what it is. But actually, I don't really know what it is really, or there's something about it that felt mysterious enough that I wanted to look into it a bit more. There's this question of why is it that if the void is I, then all of a sudden it's good? Why does it change like that? Because it feels like it's potentially a little bit arbitrary. Like, why is the only way for it to be sort of worthy and trustworthy is if it's me? Because also, it's not going to be me in. It's going to be me in some sense of the word, but it's obviously still going to be like, say, when they say uh, you're everything, all is one. It's still difficult and it still brings suffering and pain. So it cannot be trustworthy in a way that it'll naturally try its best not to bring suffering, because it really doesn't seem like that is what it's doing. So if you don't have that, but you still have some sense that it is me, it does relax you. How is that possible? And so then there's like, what is it? What is this I? If it isn't, well, there seems like there's a broader sense of the word that can encompass things that are not necessarily working together. And in trying to answer that question, there's this interesting element to it where, obviously I can talk about it. So in my mind, in words, I kind of have something that points towards it. But I cannot, in my mind, find any new information, any new data. But in this case, since I'm looking at it for the first time in this deeper lens, I need to get more information. Or like, how does it work? Some people may say that actually it's a hopeless pursuit, like abandon finding any answers in the mind. There's like some other intuitive way that it'll make sense, that the question will be answered. And I think here, because I did have, yeah, right. So with a question, it was honest, and this is one of the ways in which you can ask a question that works really well when you're actually very interested in it, or at least just interested in it, and you have a good sense of what it would be like to find the answer, and there's an honesty there. Then you're like motivated to actually find the answer, and so if you if in this case I would ask the question like, what is I, but it would be blocked, nothing would be happening. And so it would be a situation in which I'm very interested in the question, but I wouldn't actually spend much time in inquiry because it wouldn't do anything, nothing would happen. And it's because the way that I asked the question was very much in relationship to I, and so it sort of kills like, you're just looking in the wrong place. You're looking somewhere else for the I. You're looking for something new for I, which is like this immediate a sense of being yourself. And so yeah, nothing would happen. And this is my experience with asking the question, who am I? It doesn't really lead to anywhere. Like, it feels my mind just goes blank. There's nothing there. And actually, the experience of so luckily with asking the question, what is I could also look into that question by, seeing, what do I mean by what is what do I mean by what am I looking for, sort of a bit more meta. And then you see, yeah, like there's this a key part of which is the immediacy. And so if you really want to lock into that, you have to find a way to be like an immediate experience. And so to see that very clearly, where that is absolutely crucial, and that I was actually very interested to see what it would be like to gather some data, then I was able to actually experience it a bit more. And it was like in this immediate experience that then actually you get, some sense of knowing, you get translated, and then you can also get packaged into thoughts and then into something that the mind can work with. But there's a definite chain of events where the experience happens before and then the thoughts come after. And also, something to mention is that in general, with all these things, the way people tend to work with these things, people spend so much time on the thoughts and very little on the actual experience, on the core data. So of course they're going to have, like, there's only so much information, so much that you can take out of an experience, but then you're spending so much time in thought, trying to take even more out of it, even though you've essentially gotten all that you can get. So anyway, the experience of was nice. It was like, okay, this is much nicer than when I usually ask the question, who am I, or when I try to rest in being. So then I guess I have some things to say about what I can say about, to answer the question, what is I? Obviously, there's some element that comes from sort of evolution, where there just happened to be some blob that was self-organizing, and in the way that it was self-organizing, it was also spreading and gaining space. And then as it sort of gained space, like, what would fill the space would be these space-filling things, because that's what naturally happens. And then have stronger and stronger forms of self-organizations, and then you get very intelligent animals, and they have a sense of I have a sense of I that I then can plan about, I can protect, I can care for, etc. Because actually, in the way consciousness works, it seems like it's actually very neutral, and there's nothing special about this body, about myself, as in Lake. And so at the very core, you need to have this very strong and blatant lie that there is this, in my case, there is this lake, and that it is like important and whatever. But it is like an obvious, blatant lie. I think for like reasons that people understand well. I mean, the answer might be that it's fine if it's a lie. It still can be meaningful. It's just the way that it, like specifically that this whole wait, sorry. So there is this blatant lie at the very core of how this whole organism is made up. In a way that to me was very surprising and is still striking. You might argue that this can get into the weeds of different ways of understanding the word I, as in like the identity with the body, but then there's also an I that is more transcendent, which is possible. I don't know whether it's useful to distinguish or not. I think to have some awareness of it is fine. And what does I do? Well, I guess since like the way the whole system is hooked up is then built off of this lie and built to sort of feed this lie to eat when you're hungry, make yourself feel good, avoid feeling bad. And so intrinsically in the I, there's some aspect of it that is like, the best of the best. Is like the reason that you're doing everything, and it is also the place in which when you're there, it's complete relaxation, complete trust. It's it's the source of everything else, and it's the purpose of everything else, and that is its role. Now there's one aspect of it which is really confusing to me, which is the difference between like, or to what degree does it have to be immediate and have to be always there? Because there's some things that very much feel like but then you don't know how it works, you don't know what's underneath it, it comes and it goes, but it has a feeling of I to it, and it has more of a feeling to I to it than maybe other moments. And yeah, like, does it make sense for that to happen, or could you say that, I mean, one possible way you could argue is that that is the I to do with the body and all that, and the blatant lie and all that, and that has its signature, and that can be coming and going, because essentially it is just like your pattern recognizing mind trying to guess at whether something is you or not. And so that can vary. Obviously, it's not a direct thing, it's an inference. And then what is actually important, what the spiritual teachers try to steer you towards, is this eternal I that is always there. And then now it's very confusing to me as to what that actually is, because then it's not a feeling, how it is an experience, etc. And so the inquiry still goes on. But that's where I'm at. I thought this was pretty interesting, and I think particularly this question of what is it that we're actually talking about when we're talking about I think is a very good one. People spend so much time going in circles. I think this is a type of question that at least can be a bit more entertaining than the usual questions and can be quite useful. Alright, that's it. I'll take care.